Hi everyone, my name's Fiona and I'm here to just give you some hints about sitting the numeracy entry test for teaching. I know it's difficult sitting a maths test and maybe you haven't done one for ages and they're not very pleasant, but the numeracy entry test is really important because the Teaching Council has set new standards for teachers with respect to numeracy and literacy. And that's because it's been shown that teachers' literacy and numeracy levels have a real impact on the students that they teach. So although we can teach you, and we will teach you some mathematics once you get into our programs, it is important that you have enough maths already to be able to kind of join in and handle the program and teach learners. So what's in the test? Fractions, decimals, and percentages, basically. And the reason for this is because the test is supposed to be set at university entrance level, which is NCEA level 1 credits. And these are kind of critical concepts at this level. They're also really important concepts in the curriculum. And they're kind of the key, well, they are the key things that have been identified as being important for functional adult literacy in the 21st century. So being able to understand mortgages, compound interest, repayments on things, and lots of other daily tasks like cooking or building or estimating amounts we might need for something. A lot of our thinking rests on fractions, decimals, and percentages. So they're kind of the core. And they're also the things that people sometimes struggle with a little bit. So they're important things for us to know and understand. The test has 20 questions. 8 of the questions are word problems and the others are short answers. But even for the word problems, you're just putting in the answer. You're not allowed a calculator, but you are allowed to use pen and paper. Some of them involve just giving an answer, and then there are some questions where you're putting perhaps some numbers in order from smallest to largest, something like that. And on average, it's taking people about half an hour to do. So what do you need to know? I'm just going to go through some key areas and give you a few examples of what you need to know. And then there is a list available of websites where you can learn this stuff. So if your answer to these questions is, no, I don't know how to do that, that's fine. There are lots of resources available to you, mostly instructional videos they've got practice activities and interactive self-marking things. There's plenty of places for you to go and brush up on these ideas. So I've made a list of those, and the Student Centre can send that to you, or will have already sent that to you. So the first thing you need to understand is what the place value system is and how to multiply and divide by 10. So the place value system is the term that we use for how our number system's organised. So we've got ones and tens and hundreds. You might remember that from your primary schooling, thousands, 10,000s, and the numbers go up in powers of 10. Beyond the decimal point, they go down in divisions of 10, tenths, hundreds, thousands. So you need to know what place value is. You don't need to know the definition of it, but you need to know, when a 3 is in the tens place, it means 30. When a 3 is in the thousands place, it means 3,000. We use the same squiggle to mean 3, but it means a different amount when it's in a different column or space. You need to know how that works for decimal numbers. So what the places are called down past the decimal point. First one is tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. I'm trying to be really fussy about saying this for you so that it doesn't sound like hundreds and thousands. It's hundreds and thousandths, 1 over 100, 1 over 1,000. So make sure you know that. And then do you know how to multiply and divide by powers of 10, sort of up and down? The fact that each of these columns is actually a power of 10 up or down. So if you're multiplying or dividing by powers of 10, it's actually quite easy because the powers of 10 are what the columns are organised by. So have a look at that and revise that, because it's a lot more straightforward than you might think it is if I asked you something like, what is 260 divided by 10? The answer is 26. Have a think about why in terms of place value. Okay, so here's some examples of kinds of things you might get in the test. To multiply 4.57 by 100, or divide a number like 56,788 by 100. And as I say, those are easier than you think if you understand how it works. And perhaps something like adding 1,000th to a number like this, 3.4567. the number that's in the thousandths column there is the 6. So if you added 1,000th to the number, it would be 3.4577. You need to know where the numbers go on the number line. I just move myself here. Where numbers go on a number line. So a number line is like a ruler, all the numbers spaced out. You might remember using one at school. First question, do you know what a number line is, how it works? There's lots of examples on the internet. So basically it's a representation of numbers where you've got numbers marked off, as I said, like a ruler, but in between the numbers, we can also have fractions of amounts. We can have 2.5, all those kinds of things. So it's a very powerful model for numbers. So have a look at thinking about whether you know where to put fractions on a number line. So if I gave you a number line with 0 at one end and 2, would you know where 1/2 goes? Would you know where to put 1 and a half, so on? And do you know where to put decimals on a number line? Where do they go with respect to 0? Where do they go with respect to 1? So have a practice and a think about that. Again, lots of resources available on the internet. So here's some examples of questions that you might see in a test when you're going to sit. What number is halfway between 8.1 and 8.2? So think about a number line. If we were drawing that out, what might be halfway between those two numbers? Having been given 3 fractions and you have to put them in order from the smallest one to the largest one. So maybe it's 1/5, 1/2, and 2/3. Can you put those in order on a number line, or just put them in order from smallest to largest as though they're on a number line? And then you might get a question where the numbers are mixed up in the way they're presented. So it might be like a percentage, a decimal, and a fraction, and you've got to put them in order from the smallest to the largest. So you have to be able to compare them. So here, So here's the next thing, knowing how to convert fractions, decimals, and percentages into each other, if you like. So being able to turn a fraction into a percentage, and a percentage into a decimal into a fraction or a percentage. So being able to work in between the different representations. So for example, do you know already in your head some benchmarks, like 75% is the same as 3/4, or 50% and 0.5 are the same, those kinds of benchmarks? Do you know the percentages for common unit fractions, like 1/5 is 20%, or 1/10 is 10%, 12.5% is an eighth, those kinds of things? Do you understand the relationship between fractions, decimals, and percentages? So do you know how to turn a fraction into a decimal and into a percentage? And you don't have to do any fancy ones. They're all just quite everyday, sensible, common fractions, decimals, and percentages in the test. So it's not like you need to learn a formula really for how to do it. It's more about having those benchmarks and knowing the common ones and how they're related to each other. So here's some examples. How would you write 0.6 as a percentage? How would you write it as a fraction? Can you do that? How would you write 2/5 as a percentage? On the previous slide, I said that 1/5 was 20%. So 2/5 will be what as a percentage? What would it be as a decimal? You might get asked a question like, which is bigger, 2/3 or 70%? Can you work that out? And perhaps to name some equivalent fractions. So 2 fractions that are the same as 0.5. And then there are some word problems. And they're about things like finding fractions of amounts. So, what's 75% of 200? Working with discounts. It's a really common one. It's a common one we have to work with in real life. I'll show you some examples on the next page. Working out how much money might be left after you've spent something. Working out word problems that involve adding or subtracting decimals, or working out word problems where you can just use simpler numbers to estimate the answer. So sometimes you don't have to actually multiply it all out or divide it all out by hand. You can actually look at the question and see whether something's going to fit into something else or be too tall for something else or something, just by estimating. So there might be a question like that. Here's some examples. Belle has $750 in the bank. She spends 2/3 of it on a new barbecue for summer. How much money does she have left in the bank? There are 12 sheep in the sale yard. The other 3/4 of the animals at the sale yard are goats. How many goats are in the sale yard? Or my bean plant has grown to 0.76 meters, and my sister's bean plant has grown to 0.84 meters. How much taller is her bean plant than mine? So comparing two decimal amounts, being able to find the difference. So that's the contents of the test. I hope that that's helpful, just to give you an idea of the sorts of things that are in there. You can ask yourself those questions that I asked on the way through. Do I know this? Can I do those sorts of things? If the answer is no, I don't know them, I can't do them at the moment, then use the list that I've provided to go to the websites and watch the videos and do the practice exercises until you're more comfortable with doing it. Good luck.